So one of the things that I appreciate about this book is that the stories are complex and messy. And this seems right because people, including you and me, are complex and messy. And you dedicate the book to one of your interviewees named Alan Walker, which happens to be his real name. Tell us something of Alan's story. What did you learn from him, and what does he have to teach us?
Well, Alan was, he's done many things in life. He was a divinity student for a little while. He actually worked in neurobiology. He's a very bright man, but also had lived with quite severe schizophrenia. And sadly, since then, Alan took his own life. And so the reason that the book is dedicated to him in his own name is because his mother, I spoke to his mother, and she felt, and I felt, it was a fitting tribute for him. I learned a lot of things from him. I learned that voices, for example, can be absolutely devastating, but also that voices can actually be quite encouraging. He sometimes had really bad voices, terrible voices, and it may well be that that was one of the reasons why he ended his life. But he also had very supportive voices. So I began to think, when I started speaking to Alan, there's something interesting about voices that sometimes we miss, the idea that they're vicious and violent, but also supportive. And all part of somebody's social circle in that sense. I learned a lot about him in relation to stigma and love. I remember him telling me that he used to go to his work on a bus, and every day he sat beside this woman. They were very friendly. And a few months later, he had a psychotic breakdown, and he went to the psychiatrist. He spent some time with the psychiatrist, and eventually he got a diagnosis of schizophrenia. And I remember he said to me, I was just so disappointed, he said. My life was over. And so he just equated that idea, I get this diagnosis, my life is over. And he went back home in the bus, and he spoke to the woman that he'd been speaking to for months, told him of his diagnosis, and she got off the bus and never spoke to him again. She just stood up and went off. And he went back home, and he said to his mum, Mum, I've got schizophrenia, my life is over. And his mum said, no, Alan. She said, you have schizophrenia, but you're not a schizophrenic. She said, you're Alan, and I love you. And I just found that incredibly powerful, that a mother's love in that situation can really take on board the pain of stigma and alienation and put somebody into a position where they feel lovable, even though culturally the emphasis seems to be on the unlovability of their situation.